Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on cybersecurity in Southeast Asia. My name is Dr. Nicholas Hamasevich, and I'm a program manager at the East-West Center's Washington, D.C. office. The East-West Center is an organization dedicated to fostering better relations and understanding among the peoples of the United States and Asia through programs of cooperative study, training, and research. And part of that research effort is with our RICE program, which is an acronym for the Research, Innovation, and Collaboration Exchange Program, where we partner with experts and organizations to undertake projects that examine relevant issues to U.S. Indo-Pacific relations in new and creative ways. We are excited to be working with Florence Gamboa and Fax Asia on this project on cybersecurity in Southeast Asia. Florence is the managing editor and coordinator of Fax Asia. She is also a Pacific Forum Young Leader and was previously a non-resident Lloyd and Lillian Vossi Fellow. This is a very important project and topic. When you read through the papers and watching these webinars, you're going to see just how interconnected these issues of development, economics, personal livelihood, and international security are tied into these cybersecurity efforts of these Southeast Asia countries. This webinar is the third in a four-part series of webinars on cybersecurity in Southeast Asia, along with the relevant papers. And I want to turn it now to Florence to tell you more. Florence.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third webinar in the series on the state of cybersecurity in Southeast Asia. First of all, on behalf of Fax Asia, I would like to thank the East-West Center for its generous support and funding and facilitating this timely initiative. The East-West Center has long been a key player to understanding and mutual cooperation among the peoples of the United States and the Indo-Pacific. This project would not have been possible without the EWC's enduring commitment to fostering regional connectivity and intellectual exchange. I personally would like to thank Ms. Zoe Weaver-Lee and Dr. Nicholas Hamasevich for their guidance and help. For those joining us here for the first time today, I'd like to share with you what inspired me to propose this research project to the East-West Center. Technology and digital connectivity has transformed our daily lives. With that, cybersecurity has become something that affects all of us personally. Most of us may have encountered or have been targeted by some sort of cyber threat. These personal vulnerabilities are amplified. Sorry. These personal vulnerabilities are amplified when it comes to the state level. Our governments are challenged to defend not only critical infrastructure, but also digital sovereignty against malign cyber operations and transnational cybercrime. This is exactly why the East-West Center and Fax Asia launched the State of Cybersecurity in Southeast Asia project to uncover common challenges and explore avenues for cooperation with like-minded partners, especially the United States. The project featured 10 articles published in EWC's Asia Pacific Bulletin and complemented by this webinar series. The articles and videos can both be found at EWC and Fax Asia website. In the past few weeks, our webinars have spotlighted many concerns and challenges. The first webinar on Vietnam, Cambodia, and Indonesia highlighted the need for cyber hygiene and education to enhance regional cybersecurity and resilience, as well as the need for stronger domestic regulations. Skill shortages, over-reliance on external providers, and gaps in public-private partnerships were also discussed. In the second webinar, speakers examined the cybersecurity implementation challenges in Malaysia, Thailand, and the Philippines. This session highlighted issues of political will, enforcement gaps, budgeting difficulties, and the need for regional collaboration in addressing cybersecurity challenges. The two webinars have been enlightening, outlining how Southeast Asian states face similar cybersecurity challenges with varying degrees of impact and priorities, each implementing domestic law and adopting cybersecurity norms differently due to various factors. Today will be another interesting discussion featuring Brunei and Singapore with Ms. Zara, Laila, Cheong, and Ms. May Chow. I would like to extend my gratitude to both of the authors and speakers for their intellectual generosity and patience throughout the editing process. I would also like to thank our discussant, Lieutenant Colonel Jan Chavez RCO, for joining us today. Our dear audience, thanks again for joining us, and I'm very much looking forward to the thought-provoking insights on the cybersecurity approaches of Brunei and Singapore, two very small states with different capabilities, yet facing similar challenges. Their experiences might inform a broader understanding of bilateral and regional cybersecurity cooperation and divergence.
Great, thank you, Florence. Let me introduce these great panelists to everyone. Zara Laila Cheong is a cybersecurity officer at Cybersecurity Brunei and a digital forensics teaching assistant at the University Brunei Darussalam. She also serves as an operation officer at Information Technology Protective Security Services and previously served as a rapporteur for Majlis Belia Brunei and an application development analyst at Dynamic Technologies. Mei Chao is a research assistant at the Center on Asia and Globalization at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, National University of Singapore. Her research interests include U.S.-China rivalry, security cooperation, the role of threat perception in foreign policy, and geopolitics in the Asia Pacific. Lieutenant Colonel Jan Chavez Arceo is Lieutenant Colonel in the Philippine Army Reserve Force and a well-known systems integrator with an extensive track record in strategic planning, policymaking, strategic communication, and project management in areas like strategic studies, international development, cyber diplomacy, and cyber governance. She has worked extensively with the ASEAN senior officials meeting on transnational crime while serving as a consultant at the Philippines Department of Justice and a member technical working group that developed the Philippines anti-cybercrime prevention law. She is a cybersecurity consultant of the Philippines National Security Council, a non-resident fellow at Strat-Based Institute, and a national security fellow of the Philippine Council for Foreign Relations. So we have a great panel for you, and I'd like to turn it over to Zara Laila Cheong to start us off. Zara.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Nicholas. I would also like to thank the East-West Center in Washington and FACS Asia for allowing us this opportunity to present the article on behalf of Brunei Darussalam. So Brunei Darussalam, though small in size, is undergoing rapid digital transformation. As more services, infrastructure, and business move online, cybersecurity has become a critical pillar of national resilience. The article that I've provided explores how Brunei is responding to this evolving threat landscape through institutional strength, legal frameworks, and regional collaboration. Brunei's cybersecurity efforts are led by the Ministry of Transport and Info Communications, supported by the Authority for Info Communications Technology Industry, and also known as AITI. Cybersecurity Brunei Darussalam plays a central role in strengthening national cyber resilience and operates three key units. We call them BRUCERT, which handles incident response and public awareness. The Cyber Watch Center, which monitors threats and shares intelligence. The National Digital Forensics Lab, which assists in cybercrime investigations with the authorities. So together, these institutions work closely with law enforcement and the private sector, including UNN, which manages all core networks and infrastructure to improve national security in Brunei Darussalam. In 2024, Brunei recorded 646 cyber incidents with online scams, impersonations, and unsolicited messages. So these were incidents that were targeting the public. This shows a rise in social engineering, but more advanced threats such as malware infections, ransomware, and phishing are also on the rise in Brunei Darussalam. So thanks to Cybersecurity Brunei's deployment of the Endpoint Detection and Response System, EDR, malware infections dropped significantly from 4,000 to just over 3,000 within 1 year. So Brunei, in terms of international posture, Brunei maintains a neutral, sovereign first cybersecurity stance, While we are not a participant in China's Belt Road Initiative, we remain open to future collaborations in secure technologies and digital infrastructure, provide that it aligns with national interests. But Brunei does share strong bilateral ties with Singapore, especially in joint training and threat sharing, and actively engages in ASEAN cyber cooperation to strengthen regional resilience. We've always had this strong relationship with Singapore. So in terms of legal protections in place, Brunei Darussalam did release the Cybersecurity Act in 2023, which provides a legal foundation to designate critical information infrastructure, mandate compliance, empowers cybersecurity with investigative authority. The Cybersecurity Code of Practice sets clear standards for risk management and incident response. Separately, AITI is also has just recently released their personal data protection order to regulate how private organizations handle citizens' data, balancing innovation with privacy rights. But this does not apply to the government. So my recommendations would be to strengthen cyber workforce development through education and ASEAN cooperation, encourage private sector involvement through incentives and compliance support, enhance cross-border threat intelligence sharing, particularly with ASEAN nations, invest in next-generation cybersecurity infrastructure, including AI, blockchain, and cloud security, which we are actually doing right now, develop regional cyber crisis protocols for coordinated response for large-scale incidents. So in conclusion, Brunei has taken strong foundational steps in cybersecurity. However, as threats grow more sophisticated, continued progress depends on sustained investment in technology, policy, talent, and partnerships. Cybersecurity is not just a technical challenge for us, but it's also a national imperative. So we find our people to be part of that cybersecurity landscape. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We really appreciate that. May, please.
Right. Good morning, everyone. So my name is May, and I would like to thank the East West Centre as well as Facts Asia for the opportunity to present on the state of Singapore's cybersecurity. My presentation will be divided into 3 parts and will be a bit longer, around 7 to 8 minutes, but I've been told that that's okay, so please bear with me. So firstly, my presentation will delve into the current state of Singapore's digital landscape and some of the major concerns with regards to cyber threats. Then I will highlight some of the key efforts outlined in Singapore's National Cybersecurity Strategy, as well as some policies undertaken to ensure its own cyber resilience and how it works alongside the rest of the ASEAN member states and other countries around the world to ensure a secure, open, and resilient cyberspace. And lastly, I will go through some of the future steps, at least in my opinion, that are essential in ensuring sustained progress and maintain robust frameworks to manage these cyber threats. So firstly, information and technology have long been regarded as the means to leapfrog and support Singapore's survival and economic development. Since launching the Smart Nation initiative in 2014, Singapore has pursued a whole-of-nation approach in building a thriving digital future, which aims to improve lives and economic outcomes. Within the past 10 years, Singapore not only has one of the highest internet penetration rates in the world, but also maintains a strong reputation of having advanced digital infrastructure, access to innovative technologies, and strong government support to ensure responsible implementation of technologies to sustain and bolster economic competitiveness. While the cyberspace has opened up incredible opportunities, it's also made Singapore particularly vulnerable to online threats. In 2024, Singapore was ranked as the 8th most targeted country globally for cyber threats, up from 9th in 2023 and 12th in 2022. Over the past 3 years, actual reported cyber crimes have also tripled, rising from just over 8,000 cases in 2020 to nearly 29,000 in 2024. And alarmingly, scam-related financial losses in 2024 had reached a 5-year high of SGD about 380 million. Furthermore, A concerning trend is an increasing target of critical infrastructure, which could result in severe disruptions to essential services such as healthcare, transport, and energy, potentially jeopardizing public safety and, of course, national security. In response to these growing cyber threats, Singapore has implemented a range of robust policies and strategies to manage cyber risks. Central to this effort is the establishment of the Cybersecurity Agency, the CSA, which oversees and coordinates national cybersecurity efforts. Additionally, the Singapore Cybersecurity Strategy lays out a comprehensive framework to enhance cyber resilience and to operationalize these goals in more focused and effective manner. The CSA also adopts and executes 5-year master plans to ensure Singapore continues to remain agile and responsive in the face of evolving cyber threats. So for example, from the 2016 cyber plan, which mostly focused on critical infrastructures in Singapore, the updated master plan in 2021 highlighted the need to expand beyond critical infrastructures and consider other industries as well. So through these initiatives, Singapore has adopted a multi-layered approach to cyber preparedness, emphasizing on public-private partnerships, simulation exercises, and international collaboration. So on the international front, Singapore has also partnered with multinational corporations such as MasterCard to bolster cybersecurity in the financial services sector. In addition, Singapore also collaborates with regional and global partners such as Australia and the ASEAN member states to share best practices, build capacity, and strengthen interoperability of cyber standards. In 2019, Singapore established the ASEAN-Singapore Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, and this was used to conduct research, carry out cyber defense exercises, and provide technical trainings, as well as focus in areas such as international law, cyber strategy, and developing cyber norms, among other cybersecurity policy issues. So while these efforts are commendable and Singapore has made a lot of progress, I think it's also important to note that there are still persistent gaps that can be improved upon to sustain Singapore's cyber preparedness and capabilities in dealing with increasingly complex cyber threats. Individuals and businesses both need to adopt more proactive and rigorous approach to cybersecurity, which I would love to go into further, maybe in the Q&A, and as well as consider how, as the digital landscape continues to evolve, Singapore needs to continue to stay vigilant in updating and expanding support frameworks and consider the rise of new technologies such as the role of AI and quantum technology as well, and the role it plays in transforming the way cyber defense, cybersecurity threats are being managed. So those are some of the concerns. And of course, in addition to nurturing local talent, it's important to forge active regional and international partnerships. Collaborating with countries is important in providing valuable insights and shared intelligence to manage these emerging threats. And having more robust cyber norms and frameworks is critical to guide countries towards an interoperable cybersecurity practices and foster more peaceful, inclusive coexistence in the digital realm, where we all have common shared interests as well. So by promoting a predictable and stable behavior in the cyberspace and working to prevent the escalation of digital conflicts, Singapore can play a leading role in building a trusted, secure, and inclusive digital order through promoting global cooperation and mutual learning. So with that, I'd like to stop here, and I look forward to more discussion ahead and exploring some of the prompts that I brought up in greater detail. Thank you.
Thank you, May. Really appreciate that. You have two great presentations there about Brunei and Singapore. Jan, we'd like to hear your thoughts on these papers and presentations, please.
Thank you, Nick. Before anything, I wish to thank East-West Center and Fax Asia for the invitation to participate in this webinar series on cybersecurity focused on the ASEAN players. To all those tuned in from different parts of the globe, my greetings of peace to all of you. Before I proceed, I wish to be clear that my thoughts and opinions are in no way the official position of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, but rather solely mine as a scholar, researcher, and analyst. Let me first congratulate my co-panelists and presenters from Brunei, Darussalam, and Singapore, Zara and May, for their eloquent sharing of their respective papers. These two ASEAN states may be relatively smaller in terms of physical size, but their cybersecurity initiatives are and have been two of the most remarkable in the region. And it is quite enriching to hear the major strides they have made in this area of not just regional concern, but of global interest. These two ASEAN countries have been leading the regional bloc in terms of cybersecurity initiatives, as Brunei have completed its national cybersecurity framework as early as 2017, intended to coordinate all cybersecurity-related efforts and risk mitigation from multiple cyber-related agencies, as well as strengthen enforcement to ensure protection of their people and country, and further compliance to international cybersecurity standards. On the other hand, while even if Singapore had its Infocom Security Master Plan as early as 2005 and established its cybersecurity agency in 2015, its cybersecurity strategy was launched only in 2016, just a year earlier than Brunei's national cybersecurity framework. Still, way ahead of their other ASEAN counterparts. And these policies have been updated and added, more policies have been added to meet the challenges of the current times and the highly evolved threats, as May and Zara has, clearly articulated this morning. Given the highly developed and high-income economies of these two countries, their cybersecurity initiatives are strategic imperatives in this hyper-connected global economy to ensure protection from cyber criminals in order to sustain unhampered economic growth and maintain resilience amidst the evolution and sophistication of these transnational threats. Despite slight differences in their respective cybersecurity strategies, both countries are keen on digital resilience for unhampered economic development. Digital transformation is key in Brunei's vision to become a smart nation and its mission to drive and enhance socioeconomic growth. This vision and mission are highlighted in Brunei's Digital Economy Master Plan 2025, which supports the objectives of Brunei's Wawasan, or its Ambition 2035, to achieve high quality of life for the people of Brunei, have a highly educated and skilled workforce, and a sustainable dynamic economy. Zara cited in her paper that Brunei maintains political neutrality in international cybersecurity engagements. They opt to for self-reliance and regional collaboration rather than alignment with major powers like the United States or China. She highlighted Brunei's cybersecurity policies focus on sovereignty, ensuring that the nation, Brunei in this case, does not depend on external infrastructure or technology. Given Brunei's rich economy, this may be possible. However, given the transnational nature of cyber threats, intergovernmental collaboration is and will be crucial in achieving its digital and economic resiliency objectives, especially in the area of law enforcement and criminal prosecution. Furthermore, with a growing geopolitical tension in the region due to territorial disputes, Brunei's position of neutrality may be challenged at some point as these geopolitical issues transcends into the cyber domain. Singapore, on the other hand, have always been recognized by its ASEAN peers as leading the pack when it comes to cybersecurity. Hence, it is the lead shepherd in the ongoing drafting of the ASEAN Cybersecurity Convention, and it hosted the establishment of the ASEAN Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. And at the core of its national security strategy is truly cyber resiliency. Singapore's cyber strategy, as cited by May, is built on 4 pillars, namely enhancing infrastructure resilience through collaboration with the private sector and experts, fostering cooperation among the public, industry, and government, developing a robust cybersecurity ecosystem by expanding the workforce with industry and academia, and strengthening international partnership to combat cyber threats. This strategy is one that is considered as the whole of nation or whole of society approach, as May actually mentioned earlier. This strategy is recognized globally to be the best practice considering the evolving threat, elements, and landscape. Likewise, this approach is also key in the development of an agile cyber workforce with continuous upgrade of skills to mitigate, prevent, and respond to cyber attacks or cyber crimes. Hence, the need for public and private or industry sectors plus academia to collaborate is a strategic imperative, something that Singapore knows too well and May articulated very clearly as well. The interesting things to note as regards Brunei's and Singapore's approaches to cybersecurity, as cited in the two papers, are the specific operational initiatives, such as the BRUCERT's use of the honeypot, which acts as a decoy designed to attract and study cybercriminals to understand their methods and tools without endangering real assets. That is quite interesting and quite brilliant, to say the least. Singapore's Zero Trust program creates a culture of cybersecurity among the Singaporeans, and its regular cyber simulation exercises to assess cyber preparedness and response capabilities is both a practical and prudent approach to cybersecurity capability development and policymaking. What is most interesting to note in both countries' approaches is the attention to emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, quantum computing, blockchain, etc., as an essential tool in the detection, mitigation, prevention, and response to cyber threats in a timely manner, thus ensuring cyber resiliency. Similarly, their approaches to protecting critical infrastructures as being critical imperatives is also brilliant. My key takeaways from these two papers are as follows. One, the lack of cybersecurity resiliency can result to economic disruption and grave financial losses for highly digitized economies such as Brunei and Singapore, something that we have seen already in various other countries in other parts of the world. Number two, education, sustained training, and capability development of the cyber workforce has tremendous impact on the immediate and especially long-term cyber resiliency level of a country. Brunei and Singapore see this as a very important strategy. Third, regular cybersecurity simulations and similar operations can help define the capability readiness and level of cyber resiliency of a state, especially one that have a robust digital economy. Also, state-initiated cyber espionage and influence operation is growing in the region, and this is strongly attributed to the ever-increasing power competition between the United States and China, and the recalibration of policies of the Trump administration can potentially impact on the collaborative efforts in cybersecurity enhancement programs in the ASEAN region. Fifth, information sharing and threat assessment exchange between and among ASEAN states may be pivotal to the region's cybersecurity resiliency. And I cannot wait for the ASEAN Cybersecurity Convention to be finished and ratified. And lastly, the whole of society or multi-stakeholder approach to cybersecurity resiliency is absolutely valuable. Creating the context and threat-specific operational framework is key for every country, but there are a number of areas of convergence for ASEAN member states. So with that, that is essentially my take on the two papers have been presented quite well. Thank you very much, and back to you, Nick.
Thank you so much, Jan. I really appreciate it. So we had some great presentations and papers for you. So please, if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A and we'll try and get to them. And I will start us off with some questions and conversation as you place those questions in that Q&A box. So Zara, we've seen this thing come up in your paper and other papers. It's the Computer Emergency Response Team, these CERTs. And so other countries have them, other papers have talked about them. Can you just kind of tell us what a CERT is and what that computer emergency response team actually entails? How many people are usually involved? Or what are some of the same characteristics that we see across these different teams?
So our Bruce Cert team are actually people who are actually already working with the company that we train, because it's actually based on the standards set by Singapore as well. They have their own cert team, so do Indonesia. So Brunei followed suit as well because we saw the need for it. So they are the emergency response, the first responders when it comes to cybersecurity. So when there are issues within the government or private sector, or even the public, they are who we go to first. From there, they will either advise the public or visit the site and see what can be done from there before engaging with further experts within the company as well. So BruceCert was initially started by the IT Protective Security Services, which was eventually siphoned to the Cybersecurity Brunei, the government, to oversee everything.
Great, thank you. May or Janet, anything with the certs and how we should be looking at those as important factors in cybersecurity and cyber defense for countries?
Yeah, maybe I can add a bit about Singapore CERT. So Singapore CERT is actually under the CSA as well. So the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, and they respond to cyber incidents that's happening within Singapore. So they facilitate the detection and the resolution and prevention of cyber incidents. So they have a response checklist. So you can go through the checklist to help organizations to prepare and respond to cyber incidents. They release publications as well to encourage guidelines. They have our own version of a password checker, I believe. So you can sort of self-check your own the level of cybersecurity, and you can also report to phishing emails within a specific time. So that's, I think, something as well that we need to improve on is our timeliness in response, because what happens if it's working outside of during hours, then you take a longer time to respond, right? Also, I think we can talk a bit about ASEAN's CERT. So ASEAN CERT is something that is working across ASEAN countries as well. And this is to promote greater information sharing and response across borders in ASEAN. So I think that's something that needs to be developed further, I believe, and improved upon to further improve coordination for responses during crises. Thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree with the two ladies. National certs is very critical in addressing cybersecurity threats in a very timely manner. We have suggested also creating sectoral certs as well as organizational certs. This way, the response time would be faster, and the addressing the threat the threat will be, in fact, done in a timely manner, as I've said. So the CERT model is actually being operationalized in many of the countries, and in all countries for that matter. It's really just it varies only in terms of size, in terms of number, and in terms of scale and scope with regards to where and how to respond.
Thank you. I like the idea of being able to submit the phishing emails. I would have lots of submissions to those certs with all these emails that we get. May, it surprised me. I don't know if it should have, but it surprised me just how much Singapore has been targeted. And you said it was the 8th most targeted country globally. Do you, I mean, have thoughts on why that is and what's happening there?
Well, first, I think there's a few reasons as to why Singapore is a hot spot target. But I think the main one would probably be because Singapore is a very well-established hub in terms of economic activity, particularly in Southeast Asia, in the region, APAC as well. Singapore maintains a very open economy, and it's moved towards becoming a even more digitalized in our everyday lives, that means that we become more vulnerable as well. There are more points of target, I believe. And I also think that Singapore's position, I think this will lead a bit into the other question that's in the Q&A as well, is that Singapore's position between the US and China competition would place a lot of pressure as well, and we can make it exposed to potentially, state-sponsored cyber attacks, or, people trying to understand what's going on in Singapore, what's going on in the region, since there's so much activity happening in Singapore. So I think that makes Singapore very vulnerable to attacks. And I think that's just not only in Singapore, but also in ASEAN in general. And I think, the two ladies can also share more about their experience. I think they can share quite a bit as well.
Jan, please go ahead.
Thank you, Nick. I just wanted to mention that, in the topic of cybersecurity and in addressing all of these cyber threats, I think oftentimes what is overlooked is the social dimension of the threat and issue. It's more than, and I'm sure many of the experts have discussed this already in recent times, that it is more than just a tech or a technology issue, but really what is happening in terms of the vulnerability level of the targets or the victims is really has a lot to do with the social engineering or the social victimization aspect of the threat. And that's something that needs to be further discussed, needs to be further studied, and needs to be further socialized in terms of creating higher awareness among the populace. That way, as you said, these phishing attacks, as well as all these attempts at scamming regular people, can be fully avoided. So awareness is very critical, and studying the social engineering aspect of the threat is very important as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it looks like the people in our audience are picking up on this idea that both Zara may have talked about, as far as Brunei and Singapore trying to be neutral, trying to balance the US-China dynamic. Zara, I thought was part of the interesting thing with your piece was kind of political neutrality on international cybersecurity arrangements, but the idea that and being neutral with infrastructure and technology, but then also trying to reach out and have some information coordination and other things. So maybe if you could talk about that a little bit. And then May, as you mentioned, the question about Singapore trying to balance those things, where it itself is being independent with its cybersecurity policy and being out front, but then having the US and China with their digital spheres and digital policies, especially, how does that impact what Singapore is trying to do?
Okay, to address that question, Brunei has always taken a carefully balanced sovereignty first approach when evaluating potential cooperation. Especially, we do have investments related to China, and even that we had deals in place to protect Brunei's the well-being of the Bruneian people and also our land. But while we recognize the technological and economic benefits, such as the affordable infrastructure, emerging technologies, and investment opportunities, we also conduct rigorous national assessments to ensure that any cooperation aligns with our cybersecurity priorities. We also consult our partnering countries such as Singapore, Malaysia, who we prioritize. So this includes examining data sovereignty, ensuring that Brunei itself retains full control over the national data and infrastructure, which is something that we have always done and will continue to practice. Risk exposure, assessing potential vulnerabilities, including backdoors or third-party access. So this is the issue with we're using technologies provided by other countries. We have to assess it first to ensure there is no spyware or anything that might compromise our national security. Next is interoperability and standards, determining whether technologies align with Brunei's legal and technical and strategic standards. So, but ultimately, any digital cooperation must strengthen, not just compromise. That is the same way with Brunei cybersecurity resilience. We have been given opportunities in the past. We do our assessment. We don't simply reject it, but we still have to respect our political stance, which is to remain neutral. So if we favor one country, it might affect the geopolitical stance of Brunei Darussalam.
Then maybe I'll respond to Nicholas' question. So it's difficult. Singapore is a very open and small country, as mentioned many times. And I think that makes it very difficult to maintain its strategic voice, especially strategic autonomy, in the face of a lot of rising geopolitical tensions. There's a lot of talk about bifurcation of the internet. There's greater, stronger securitization of our cyberspace. I think this is nothing that's just Singapore, but for other ASEAN countries as well. They're all mostly small and medium-sized countries, and this means that we need to work together, importantly, to establish the rules that we rely on to maintain and protect our own sovereign interests, our own strategic autonomy, our own voice. We need to continue to cooperate with each other beyond just US, China, to maintain the high standards that we believe is important for ourselves and our own interests, as well as that of the region. And then, hold these standards, not only to China, but also to the US, and encourage this cooperation, open collaboration and inclusivity, rather than contribute to the tensions, allow them to sway our own interests as well. Yeah, so that's what I think. Yeah, thanks.
Great, thank you. Another question we had in the chat was about cyber attacks and how they blur the line between espionage and acts of war. And so for Singapore, Malaysia, even Jan for Philippines or any other examples, how are countries trying to decide how to define cyber attacks in that aspect of an act of war, and how to define a cyber red line to justify a diplomatic response or a retaliatory response in some way?
I'd like to respond first.
Yeah, please.
Nick. Okay. That is actually an issue that I am particularly very interested in and have been having a lot of conversations about. Because of the nature of the threat, in terms of it being asymmetric as well as hybrid, and it's not kinetic in terms of nature, as we have been familiar with in terms of traditional warfare. It does pose a lot of effect or impact on society. And its impact can actually lead to violence, can lead to actually, as we've said, economic disruption or societal disruption that are as lethal as any kinetic warfare is. And so setting a red line, in various conversations, I've always said that perhaps it's important. It's time to actually set a red line that the global community should be able to sit down and discuss it already, because truly there are a lot of cyber attacks and cyber crime incidents that has resulted to very disruptive effects. And it is definitely time to actually sit down and discuss if, in fact, we should, and I think we should already define that red line, cybersecurity red line for the community. Thank you.
Maybe I'll add a bit about the red line thing. So Singapore doesn't really have, red lines of declarations. I think to maintain its, geopolitical position is very precarious, and there's often very limited flexibility in responses. And it's also important to note that a lot of these attacks, it's very hard to explicitly say this is, it's cited to this, it's traced back to this, and this can unnecessarily, provoke adversaries and escalate tension. So it's very hard to enforce consistently. So I think instead of looking at these are the cyber attacks, instead it's more of how can we navigate these and prevent these attacks from happening? How can we be prepared in dealing with these attacks so that nothing gets compromised, or at least something very little gets compromised? And it's also important to make sure and uphold that international norms are being established at a high level, keep encouraging countries to follow up with these norms, practices, and hold them to these standards so that they sort of internalize it as well as the right way, not say the right way, but the more diplomatic way in handling the cyberspace in a way that's more cooperative and mutually beneficial for all, rather than use it as a tool to further its political interests or self-motivated motives. Yeah.
Nick, just to build off on the discussion, as a rejoinder, I completely, absolutely agree with May in terms of the what red lines or defining red lines can evoke. However, for me, it might be a deterrence, and it might be a motivation, or it can push different states to follow through, upgrade, and fast track their cybersecurity development programs, as well as fast track their compliances to international standards. That's essentially where I'm coming from in terms of possibly defining that red line. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's so interesting. AI is really interesting to me right now. And Jan, you mentioned AI as far as like a security threat. What are some ways that people are anticipating AI being kind of a cybersecurity threat? And then for Zara and May, how are Brunei, Dar es Salaam, and Singapore trying to think about and integrate best practices for AI within the cybersecurity landscape that they've already built?
Thank you, Nick, for that question. We have seen thus far what AI is capable of doing and what people are capable of producing using AI. And again, it is not merely in terms of enhancing the cyber criminal capabilities, but also it can actually create so much confusion and so much misunderstanding between and among states or nations or a group of people because of AI. And when we talk about cybersecurity, we're not just talking about hacking or phishing or systems attacks, but we're also talking of misinformation, disinformation, using the digital technologies available to us. And with artificial intelligence coupled with perhaps quantum computing and so on, the capability of cyber criminals can be further enhanced. And it is very critical for states to make sure that we are 2 steps, 4 steps, 5 steps ahead of these cyber criminals. We have seen over the past years how cyber criminals have been way advanced in terms of their capabilities and capability development. The states or the government should be able to be in step or way ahead of these cyber criminals, as well as these very malicious actors, whether these are state actors or non-state actors. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you. Zara. Yeah, May, go ahead, please.
Okay, maybe I can
Thank
talk
you.
a bit about the nexus of the AI, cybersecurity, the conversation that's going on. And I think we can look at it in three ways, I would say. So the first one is on AI itself and the cyber threats that it poses. So, AI uses machine learning, it uses information to sort of build this black box that comes out with a types of output. So in terms of that, it can also be targeted as a cyber threat in itself. So how can we secure it? How do we ensure that these AI machines sort of adopt safe practices? How are they fair? So we need to consider about, how can we protect data that's coming out as well, since we're all, a lot of us use it in our daily lives as well. And secondly is how criminals are using AI in a sense to further their practices. So AI does lower the barriers to entry, it can help to enhance cyber threats, make it more sophisticated, make it more difficult to detect. So those are the threats that we also need to think about. How can we improve then our own systems, our own AI detection capabilities to sort of manage the increased difficulty in looking at cyber threats that come in from using AI. And yeah, so that's thing. So I think that AI is really important in the sense that it's changing the way that cyber threats, as I mentioned earlier, is coming in. We need to know how to understand the space as well as how to utilize it to sort of manage the risks as well and improve our own cyber resilience skills in order to really use it as the way to help us rather than let it affect our own cyber digital space. Yeah.
I can add on to that for Brunei Darussalam. So Brunei has always recognized AI as both a powerful enabler and also a potential threat multiplier in the cybersecurity domain. On one hand, AI enhances threat detection, response automation, and predictive analytics. But on the other hand, it can be weaponized for deepfakes, which is quite common in Brunei Darussalam. We have scammers from overseas using deepfakes on our Prince Martin to encourage people to click phishing links on social media and also evasion of traditional defenses. So AI readiness in Brunei Darussalam remains quite low, particularly amongst small, medium enterprises. But we do see government-linked agencies and critical infrastructures in sectors looking into AI more. I personally encourage the use of AI amongst my students in UBD because the human mind can only handle so much, and there's so much threats in the world, especially in cybersecurity. And one way to continuously learn about these threats, especially these evolving threats, is through the use of AI tools. Yeah, so that's it from me.
Thank you. It's such a fascinating topic. I mean, it seems like every other day there's a list of the 10 AI tools I should be using. And like all three of you mentioned, the misinformation is unbelievable, especially the voice recognition and the voice ability to make the voice connect with the picture. It's unbelievable. I mean, like you said, there's some good things. So like podcasts are using it, audiobooks, but then the misinformation when you have a political candidate and you sub in the voice for that, or even just health. I've seen it with health influencers where they put in different things than what this person actually said. It's unbelievable. One of the things that was interesting with the conversation was the digital economy, and how one of the questions in the chat was, what are some contingency plans? This was particularly for Singapore in May, that Singapore is putting on for digital trade, the contingency plans for that. And how should we, when countries or our states are saying, oh, we should look at digital economy, how should we be looking at the digital economy aspect of it and then the digital security aspect of that?
Yeah, so in terms of the digital economy, Singapore actually has quite a lot of international cooperation agreements with the US, with I think it was the Chile, South Korea, Australia as well. So we work with a lot of international partners in maintaining the standard, I would say, for financial transactions, making sure that there are guidelines in place and information sharing as well. I know that there are workshops being held to encourage capacity building, institutional collaboration across critical infrastructure sectors as well. And I think all these sort of help to build Singapore's connectivity as well as practices, and sort of make sure that its economic and trade environment is protected. Yeah, that's what I think I have to say. Yeah.
Great. Jan, you mentioned how Brunei and Singapore are kind of seen as solid test cases and leaders in ASEAN. What are the Philippines and other countries trying to emulate from Singapore and Brunei?
Well, the Brunei and Singapore particularly are the aspirations when it comes to cybersecurity capability as well as resiliency. The framework in terms of the multi-sectoral cooperation and collaboration is one of the really good ones that these two countries have. And through that collaborative framework or cooperative framework, their capability development is enhanced further. And that is something that we want to be able to emulate in the Philippines. And I'm sure the other countries looking into enhancing their cybersecurity posture is also studying this operational framework that Singapore and Brunei has in place. We can only aspire to achieve what Brunei and particularly Singapore has achieved when it comes to these cooperative and collaborative frameworks in terms of being able to achieve a cyber security capability that is truly intended to ensure that there is very minimal, if at all zero, risks to the economy as well as to the normal way of life of their citizens. And that is something that we are looking into in the Philippines particularly. And we're really working very closely with a lot of partners and allies and looking into the studying the different frameworks that are in place already in different parts of the world and also in Southeast Asia, and see how we can actually round up our resources, both human and technological, as well as other resources, so that we can actually at least get to the point where Singapore is and Brunei is, and even Malaysia, in terms of cybersecurity capability and resilience. Thank you, Nick.
Great. What Zara, you talked about the CSP's endpoint detection and response system. How is that actually working to try to reduce those malware attacks? That seemed interesting to me that they were able to reduce the malware attacks. So what's going on there, and what's kind of how are they trying to do that?
So it deters attacks by monitoring the attacks itself. So it contains the threat at an endpoint level, such as laptops, servers, and even mobile devices. So this actually where one of the good examples where AI is actually used. So it learns there are patterns within attacks that it recognizes and will be able to prevent it from going further. So I'm pretty sure Singapore and any other country uses the same. It's being used at an enterprise level.
Interesting. Appreciate that. One of the other aspects that was brought up last week is kind of the offensive capabilities and sort of that response to attacks. And is that part of the strategy or part of the thinking in Brunei or in Singapore or Jan and any other countries that you see going on? This idea that somehow we need to respond to these attacks and be a little bit more offensive or responsive to these attacks.
In Brunei Darussalam, we do not practice offensive attacks, but we do have people trained for it. That's all I can say for Brunei Darussalam. Yeah.
I think I can add a little bit about Singapore. So we also, I don't think we do offensive attacks as well. But in 2022, Singapore's armed forces actually has the Digital and Intelligence Service branch. So that one is used to safeguard critical infrastructures from cyber attacks. It sort of does a bit of intelligence gathering and to secure command and control over digital space. And I think they are also doing a bit of information operations with regards to digital warfare. And they work with the CSA as well to carry out joint operations, especially for critical infrastructures within Singapore. Yeah.
I should also add on to that because the thing is about Brunei is that we are seen as a non-aggressive country, but it's also important to know how this offensive attack works in order for us to defend ourselves. So we do train our people for it. We just don't act on it.
That has always been a very interesting topic, offensive versus defensive. It is, in fact, a known fact that there is a persistent exploitation of vulnerabilities of networks and systems of all countries for that matter. And that is where I suppose the offensive attacks is coming from. However, I believe it is the position of every state or every country to not do offensive attacks, but rather defensive. And when we say defensive, that is countering any attack that is being lodged at the country's critical infrastructure or networks or system. So the mere act of countering these attacks is not necessarily offensive in nature, but rather it is more protective. So I believe that is the more appropriate terminology, and that is the more appropriate approach when it comes to the issue of offensive versus defensive operations when it comes to cybersecurity. It is really more the protection, mitigation, and the prevention of highly disruptive cyber attacks or cyber operation targeting critical vulnerabilities of any country's networks or system.
Zara, you've mentioned a little bit, but can you talk a little bit more about how Brunei and Singapore are looking at the U.S. and how to cooperate with the U.S.? Where are they trying to cooperate with the U.S.? What sort of aspects of cybersecurity do they see that cooperation with? Does it matter as far as kind of what's going on in the U.S. right now as far as that cooperation, or has it been sort of consistent on where the countries are trying to work with the United States?
Actually, I haven't seen the United States approach us on the cybersecurity agreements, but I do know that China does have a branch here in Brunei providing their technologies, but we don't fully invest in that as well. But we've always we're open to any help. We just don't want to show any favoritism towards which country we should obtain that help from. If someone introduces their product, we'll look into it, just as Japan has done before. But in terms of cybersecurity, we have always seen Japan as the more advanced country to provide these cybersecurity technologies.
Yeah, add a bit. I actually really agree with Zara as well. I think it's important to, be open and inclusive, particularly in that front. I know Singapore has the AI integrated digital economic cooperation roadmap with the US. Part of that roadmap includes cybersecurity as well. It includes focusing on digital trade standards, having managing cross-border data flows as well. I think what President Trump's 2.0 sort of shows is based on his early policy decisions is that there's a lot of unpredictability that will come in the coming years. And I think this unpredictability doesn't mean that we should stop cooperation with the US. I think it's so important to maintain that and try to bring them involved and at least, either is it on a bilateral or on a minilateral or multilateral level, to still involve US in this norm setting space because they are still a major player in the international environment. And I also think that, what this shows is that we also cannot entirely depend as well on the US. It's important to have, as small and medium countries, our own say and our own voice and make sure that our standards are being kept and that we are the ones pushing forward this rules-based international order, especially in the digital space, to make sure that even if the US wins, we are not going to win, and we are still going to uphold the digital order for all of us. And I think that's a very important thing for Singapore and ASEAN and the rest of the countries to remember that as well.
Great, thank you. I mean, this has been such a great conversation. I really appreciate our panelists for their insights and expertise on these issues. As you in the audience can see, they have a lot of good knowledge and information about what's going on and really have helped us kind of put these pictures together. And across our series that Florence and Facts Asia has helped put together, it's really interesting to see what these countries are doing and how they are individually trying to attack these challenges, but then also working together. So I want to thank Zara, May, and Jan, and Florence for all their work. Thank all of you for joining us. Please join us again next week for our fourth cybersecurity webinar. Where if you're staying up late with us or waking up early, we really, really appreciate it. And we thank you for all your support. So thanks again for everyone and have a great day. Thank you.